Oh baby, it is that point in European history where it's time to get conservative. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked Metternich style, then let's get to it. Now, to understand this distinctive rise of conservative ideology in this point in European history, you have to remember what happened before 1815, and mainly I'm talking about France. In the French Revolution, the people demanded liberal reforms of the government, and when the government didn't comply, the people went ahead and took over. At that point, the people reigned supreme, and the people were getting rights they never had before, and they had crushed monarchical tyranny under their feet. But then things got a little crazy during the radical phase of the revolution, more specifically during the Reign of Terror. During this phase, surrounding nations had allied against France, and those in charge in France, fearing the gains of the revolution would be lost, clamped down hard on dissent. And you know the song by now, and everybody got their heads cut off, including, but certainly not limited to, the king himself. And then came along Napoleon, who claimed to embody the ideals of the revolution, and through seemingly endless expansionism, conquered or controlled much of Europe. And so after Napoleon's defeat, as I mentioned in the last video, the Quadruple Alliance, which included Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, wanted to shut this liberal French machine down. After all, liberal reforms have brought about the execution of kings, the stripping of aristocratic privileges, the abolishment of the church, all those darlings of the conservative order. Now, conservatism as it existed in 19th century Europe basically meant this. It was a political belief that argues that governments are most stable when they uphold traditional and established norms and cultural institutions. And that's not hard to understand when you consider the conservative view of human nature. They believe that humans are inherently flawed and untrustworthy, so you can't go putting the power to govern in their hands. Instead, they argued it was better to build your society on institutions that have been handed down and vetted, like monarchy and aristocracy and religion. And it was with this ideology that leaders met at the Congress of Vienna in order to restore Europe to its inherited structures. Now, before I tell you what kind of work they did at the Congress, there are a couple of prominent conservatives to whom I need to introduce you. The first was English conservative Edmund Burke. He argued that authority and hierarchy was part of the natural order to the universe, and if those are in place, people will flourish. As such, Burke didn't believe that people were capable of governing themselves, and therefore he believed society should be ordered under a small group of elite leaders. The poster boy for French conservatism was Joseph de Maistre. He began as a supporter of the revolution, but when it devolved into violence, he was horrified. What irked him even more was the revolution's complete discarding of religious authority and the secularizing of France. To Maistre, true political authority must be rooted in religious and moral principles. He therefore argued for a return to monarchy after the revolution. Now, after the Congress of Vienna, in which conservative leaders imposed their ideology on the European continent, Europe entered into what's known as the Concert of Europe, also known as the Congress system. This was a period of a few decades in which Europe existed in the image of those conservative rulers, and in general, there was peace during that time. Now, this concert was conceived and driven by the Austrian foreign minister Klemens von Metternich, and those few decades of peace are often referred to as the Age of Metternich. He believed that only powerful central governments would bring order to the various states of Europe, as opposed to the common rabble that disrupted France in the French Revolution. So to that end, Metternich's Concert of Europe basically had three goals. First, he aimed to restore the balance of power in Europe by installing legitimate rulers on the various thrones of Europe. And by legitimate, Metternich meant old-school conservative rulers. Second, he took pains to make sure that European states upheld the rights and prerogatives of the landed aristocracy. And third, Metternich argued for the need for organized religion as the bulwark of stable states. Now, whatever you think about those three goals, the Concert of Europe more or less maintained peace in Europe until the revolutions of 1848 and arguably until World War I came along to ruin it all. Now, remember, a big part of this conservative reaction was against the liberal reforms that occurred during the French Revolution and then spread to the continent. And so for the leaders who engineered this conservative peace, they used these principles as a justification for rulers across Europe who wanted to crush nationalist uprisings and liberal revolts. For example, in 1819, Austria enacted the Carlsbad Decrees, which worked to suppress liberal and nationalist movements in the German states. The decrees outlawed nationalist organizations, forcibly dissolved radical student organizations, and removed liberal college professors from their posts. And then over in Russia, one of the most conservative states of the era, czars claimed to rule by divine right. They made prodigious use of secret police to ferret out dissent and used conservative consensus to uphold serfdom, which was little different than slavery. Okay, click right here to keep reviewing for Unit 6 of AP Euro. And click right here to grab my AP Euro review pack if you need help getting an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May. And you know me, I'll catch you on the flip-flop. Heimler out.